Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to England once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. Now we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good few times before. These guys are a very well respected name when it comes to the English craft beer scene, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but I have noticed in recent times that they've been doing a few more lagers and a few more darker beers as well, which is always a nice thing to see. It's always nice to see a well-known brewery diversify a little bit and try different things. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't tried from this brewery before. The beer itself is supposed to be a little bit of a beast, and I have to say this is one that just really kind of caught my imagination when I saw it in the shop here in Hong Kong, and definitely cool to see this brewery making their way out here to Asia as well. That was another factor. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head to England. We're going to go to the southwest of the country, a little place called Cheltenham in Gloucestershire, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Deya Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Chelt Vegas. It comes in at 12.5% ABV, so it is a little bit of a monster. And this one is an Imperial Stout. So yeah, this has a pretty impressive malt bill on it, which we'll come to a little bit later on in the video. But this is yet another beer that I picked up from Gur Beer in the One Malt down in Tsim Sha Tsui here in Kowloon in Hong Kong, who always get a good selection of things from across the world. So yeah, seeing a big Imperial Stout from Deya was really quite nice actually. So yeah, my very first Imperial Stout review from Deya here on the channel, but I've heard this is a style these guys can do very well. So let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. My first review from these guys in about 7-8 months if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Deya Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the English playlist along with a number of other things, and hopefully we can continue to add to that fairly regularly. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because that's being added to whenever we get the chance, and there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Deya Brewing Company once again. So Deya Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Cheltenham in Gloucestershire in the southwest of England, and the company was founded back in 2015 by Theo Frayne. So he was first introduced to craft beer by his dad, who brought back some beers from the US and they drank them together. But Theo soon decided that he wanted to brew these kind of beers for himself, and he got some work experience at Threakston's Brewery before going on to enrol at Heriot-Watt University in their brewing programme up in Edinburgh in my native Scotland. But after this, he worked for a while at 5 Points Brewing in Hackney in London, and then he went over to work at Odell's Brewery in Colorado in the US. But he wanted to start up his own brewery, and initially he was gypsy brewing at a few different breweries in the Cheltenham area to get his brand name out there. But he later bought a brew kit from Harbour Brewing Company down in Cornwall, and then secured a premises which they opened in 2016. But over the years, these guys have continually expanded their capacity, and then in 2019 they moved to a larger unit in the same industrial estate, where they now have a custom-built 40 hectolitre 4-vessel brewing house along with 2,000 square feet of taproom space, and they've got a large outdoor area there as well. And the original unit that they had is now used as the barrel production area, and they produce sour beers in there as well. But the brewery is named after a village in Mallorca by the same name, and as of March 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 365 different kinds of beer, and the current head brewer is Gareth Moore. But like I said, over the years, Deya have built up a very good reputation for themselves. They're one of the really well respected and well known names in the English craft beer scene, and yeah, they're particularly well known for those New England hazy IPAs. If you want to see what the brewery's like, you can check out my out and about video that I filmed. Harry of Blue Nose Beer Reviews was involved in that one as well. So yeah, just put in Deya Brewing Co to the channel, into the channel search bar, and you'll see all the different videos that I've produced involving these guys. But the out and about video was quite an interesting one, and it was really cool to film that with Harry. So yeah, go and check that out and see what you think. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Deya Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself then. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. So yeah, I thought this was quite interesting. The Chelt Vegas. Yeah, when I looked this one up on Untappd when I was deciding what to buy, this just seems as if it would be really interesting. And again, I haven't tried an Imperial Stout from Deya before, so that was one of the main driving factors in me buying this one as well. It was a little bit expensive. This was like $140 here in Hong Kong, which is like £14 sterling. This would probably cost you £8 or £9 back in England, I'm guessing. But at 12.5% for an import beer out here, I thought it was pretty fair, and it was kind of a fuck it, why not moment. So yeah, 12.5% Imperial Stout, this one. This is a half-litre can, so this is going to be my sipper beer for the evening. But yeah, to tell you a little bit about the malt base in this one, because it is pretty damn impressive. This one has a malt base of naked oats, dark crystal, black, chocolate, roasted barley, wheat and Munich malts, and they've also added in some Belgian dark sugar, cocoa nibs and bourbon vanilla. And apparently this is one that was kind of designed, if you like, by the Deya sales team. They told the brewers what kind of flavours they wanted, and the brewers went away and did that, and this is the result. The Chelt Vegas at 12.5% ABV. I think this beer might have been produced in 2023. Yeah, it says it was canned on the 30th of October 2023, and it's best before the 30th of October 2024. I'm reviewing this one for you in March. But yeah, I'm sure you probably could give it a bit longer in the can with that, but cans obviously are not as secure, if you like, as bottles are, but they will keep out the light a little bit better and things. But yeah, a 12.5% monster of a beer with Belgian sugar, cocoa nibs and bourbon vanilla paste in it. I think this should be pretty awesome. So yeah, this is the Chelt Vegas from Deya Brewing Company in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire in England. Let's get this guy out and have a taste. There we go. It's a little bit difficult to get open actually. So let's put this guy into the glass and see what it's all about. Oh, a little bit of carbonation there. We'll just let this guy settle a wee bit more. But that looks lovely. This is going to be a lovely sipper for the night. Yeah. Probably a bit of a challenge to drink this one myself, but you know, a little bit tired, was in the mood for a nice beer. You can't go wrong with something like this. So, there we are. I think we've got about 75% of the beer in the glass at this point. But it looks pretty nice. So you can see the head has faded away a little bit. We pretty much had a 2-finger frothy, very dark tan head. That's one of the darkest heads I've seen on a beer in quite a while actually, but you can see medium bubbles sitting on the surface. It gets foamier and foamier the further up that you go, and you've got a few kind of bumpy bubbles as you go through that as well. But as you would expect for an Imperial Stout, this beer is pretty much black as night. Lovely dark sort of ebony rosewood colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging they do or adjuncts you put in the beer will affect its colour too. Although when it comes to imperial stouts like this, black beers essentially, it's very, very difficult to change the colour of these just with adjuncts and things like that. And when we shine the light through this one, as I say, it's pretty much black as night. The presence of the oats and the wheat that are in here are probably what's given the beer that really high level of opacity. You can actually get a little bit more clarity to stouts that are simply, barley malt based, if you like. But yeah, this should be a really quite interesting one. So yeah. It looks the part, not too much in the way of visible carbonation, and in all honesty, nothing at all surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, nothing else to really say about the appearance of this one. You can see the head has faded away a little bit, but it is still retaining a portion. Remember, imperial stouts that contain a bit of wheat, they are more likely to maintain their head, and the higher you go in ABV, it does get a little bit harder to maintain that head. But yeah, let's take a wee look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Aroma section time. So, yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this one just smells absolutely awesome. As I say, I've never had an imperial stout from Deya, but knowing this brewery, they're not going to put out a sub-quality product. They're going to give you something good. This just smells really damn nice, and I wouldn't expect anything less. Yeah, this has got a lovely balance to it, because you get a little bit, you get a little bit of the old school Russian Imperial Stout, and you also get you do get a little bit of that more kind of modern sweet pastry stout type thing to it as well. And I've been quite consistent on the channel when I've said modern pastry stouts are not my favourite style of beer. I love the old school Imperial milk stouts, I love Imperial coffee stouts, and I do like the old school RIS as well. And this beer seems like it's going to be a little bit of a combination of the sweeter, the more old school sweet stouts, and the more old school sort of RIS type thing. It does smell really, really nice, in fact. So yeah, the way everything pieces together in this beer, I think, will be quite nice. It's going to be one of these ones that will take a little bit of time to open up and air out, but I think we're in for a little bit of a treat with this. So let's just break the aroma of this one down and describe it for you properly before we actually taste the beer. But yeah, generally speaking, it's got a good bit of dryness to it. That dry sweetness comes out, a little bit of fruitiness, and the wee bit of hoppy character. So yeah, let's just break it down. Now, the backbone of the beer, if you sugar this one up, you get a little bit of a mix of like kind of toasty rye bread crust in there. So yeah, that lovely toasty rye bread crust. There's a little bit of that almost kind of cakey sort of thing. If you think of that, when you bake a cake, that little bit of stuff that gets kind of stuck to the side of the baking tray, it's got a wee bit of that kind of vibe going on. So yeah, certainly some of that going on. And then you've got a little touch of woodiness as well, little elements of nuttiness. There's maybe a little bit of like rye bread for sure. Yeah, like sweet kind of almost German rye bread. And it has this kind of like brandy soaked sponge cake type quality as well. So yeah, the way all of that pieces together in this one, I think, is really quite interesting. The malty character is really lovely. And I mean, with all these different kinds of malts that you've got in there, the oats, the wheat, the Munich malt, the crystal, you're going to get a whole variety of things going on. So yeah, I'm getting rye bread, I'm getting like a kind of brandy soaked sponge cake. There's some sweet brown bread in there. Yeah, I really do like how that kind of pieces together. The way the aroma goes together in this one is It's really quite nice. Yeah, I do like that about this. This is lovely. On top of all the kind of cakey and bready notes, you do start to get the more kind of chocolatey elements to this one. So there's a wee bit of a more kind of 50-60% cocoa chocolate to it, but you're also getting a wee bit of a more kind of milky chocolate, you know, a 30 sort of 40% type note. The vanilla is aiding, it is sort of pushing the idea that it's got a more milky chocolate character to it, which is nice. And the brown sugars that you get in this beer are also really interesting in this one. Now, with Imperial Stouts, there's a few things you can do to these beers to like add the complexity and build up the mouthfeel. So you can either do like a kind of double mash, which is going to give you a kind of stickier mouthfeel. Again, we'll be able to tell this when we taste the beer. But you can also do a longer wort boil, and that's going to give you a more kind of leathery, brown, sugary sort of effect to the beer as well. So yeah, I'm curious to see what this one, you know, what path they've taken with this beer. Because yeah, you do get quite a little bit of brown sugar out of this one. And, you know, they've added in some Belgian dark sugar to this beer as an adjunct. So yeah, Belgian dark sugar is in there. And it gives you a little bit of that, you know, you can smell a little touch of that Belgian Bruin or Belgian quadruple type quality in here, which is really quite interesting, that red fruity brandy soaked cake kind of thing. But yeah, you do get a little bit of toasty brown sugar in here. There's some more oily kind of treacle molasses type brown sugar as well. And as I say, a wee bit of a nutty character that just pushes its way out of the beer also. But I would say, you know, when I smell this beer, compared to others within the Imperial Stout category that I've come across, it isn't the most deep and rich aroma, if you like. This one's got a little bit more kind of lightness and subtlety to it, and that's quite interesting too. I think we've said everything we need to about the kind of malty and adjuncty side of this beer, to be honest with you. So let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of it. Now, as many of you know, the Imperial Stout is not the most kind of hop forward style of beer. And of course you can age these for a long time, and that means a lot of the hoppy character is going to drop out. So yeah, for me, with this beer, you are getting little bits of kind of hoppy character. This is probably going to have a little bit of like Magnum or I forget, there's another really popular American hop to use in American Imperial Stouts. That's going to annoy me now that I've forgotten that name. But yeah, I suspect that there's something like that has been added into this one. You get a little bit of earthiness, you get a little bit of herbal character, but mainly a wee touch, there's a wee touch of like an oily floral note and some grassiness, but of course the green component of this beer really takes a back seat to the malty side of things. If we sugar the beer around a little bit, there's if we sugar the beer around a little bit, there's a few good things, there's a few interesting things going on with this one. But when it comes to the fruit, there's like an oily figgy character. There's there's an oily sort of figgy character. There's some nice kind of black currants and blackberries, and yeah, a few there's a few really interesting things going on with this one. So yeah, I do like how everything kind of pieces together in this beer. It seems it's got a good amount of complexity to it, and I think it's going to pique my interest. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. That's always half the experience with craft beer, but I think it is about time that we try this one and just see what it's all about. And I'm filming this review a little bit sleepy. I do want to get this down me before I really fall asleep. So yeah, this one is the Chelt Vegas, a 12.5% Monster Imperial Stout from the wonderful Deya Brewing Company in Cheltenham in Gloucestershire in England. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah. You know, Deya are very, very good at New England hazies. And when I try this, I would be very tempted to say it's such a shame that they don't do this kind of stuff more often. I've had lager from these guys before, I'm sure, which was really, really nice. You know, these guys can do different style as well, but obviously they focus on their New England hazies. But yeah, this is lovely. This is a very, very, very good Imperial Stout. So if you come across this, it might be a little bit pricier, but you know, just go for it for the novelty factor. You know, this brewery don't produce Imperial Stouts all that often. It is a bit of a monster at 12.5%. Buy one and share it with a friend because it's pretty bloody good. This is really, really nice. First impression, having tasted it, it leans a lot more toward that roasty, toasty side of things. It's more like an RIS, but it does have a bit more of a kind of milk stouty type creaminess to it as well. But you know, without talking about sub-styles and things too much, beautiful beer and absolutely worth trying. Do I regret paying £14-15 for the can? Nah, it's a treat. It's a treat. So why not? The more you drink of it too, the better it gets. Yeah, awesome stuff. Cannot fault it in the slightest. Yeah. So let's just break the beer down then and describe it for you a bit more in depth. We'll start on that middle third of the palate as we always do. The backbone of the beer is like a roasty, toasty, well-fired, like charred bread crust. This beer does have roasted barley in it. I think it had black malt as well. So that really dry, charred backbone kind of makes sense, to be honest with you. Let's just put the rest of this in the glass because we might have a little bit of sediment in this one. A little bit in the bottom of the can, which is to be expected when it's about 5 months old as it is. Not a big deal, but yeah. So, as I say, roasty, toasty, well-fired, crusty backbone. As you move further forward on that middle third of the palate, you get a little bit of that kind of woody character to it, a little bit of nuttiness kind of sitting in there as well. Yeah, certainly not anything to be knocked. I do like that little bit of complexity that you get. But above the roasty, toasty, black, well-fired bread crust, you do get this kind of dense, slightly sweet, rye bready character as well. So yeah, like really dense, kind of sweet rye bready character. On top of that, there's maybe like a more kind of sweet wholemeal brown bready character. And within those bready layers, there is a wee touch of nuttiness. I would definitely say that, yeah, wee touch of nuttiness kind of in there, and that lingers into the aftertaste. But above the bready layers, you start to get a more kind of slightly sweet, sponge cakey type note, and it's almost like, yeah, it is almost kind of along the lines of yeah, it's almost along the lines of I would say like a brandy soaked sponge cake, something like that. Yeah, a little bit of a kind of brandy soaked sponge cake in there, lots of kind of sweet brown sugars, and then yeah, above that kind of brandy soaked sponge cake, there's a wee bit of you're starting to get the kind of chocolatey and brown sugary notes coming out of the beer. I will say, I was talking about that before, the things you could do with an Imperial Stout, you know, double mashing and longer wort boils. It doesn't, I've got a feeling this beer might be double mash because it does have the thick mouthfeel. I don't think it's an overly long wort boil, to be honest with you. I think double mash is the more likely candidate here, but it's not overly sticky either. That's the interesting thing. Yeah. Mm. So yeah, above the kind of sponge cakey layer, you start to get the all the kind of brown sugars and the chocolate and things like that. So above the kind of brown bready layer, you've got that chocolatey layer, and at the back, you know, generally speaking, with your palate, the further back on the palate you go, the more kind of dry and bitter flavours you're going to get. Further forward you come, the sweeter flavours you're going to get. So above the kind of cakey layer, you're getting the chocolate, and if you go further back on that middle third of your palate, you've got some really nice kind of, you know, 80-90% cocoa chocolate, that really sweet, very dark chocolate character really coming out there. And as you move further forward toward the front of that middle third of your palate, it gradually kind of, it just sort of mellows out a little bit, and you get a more kind of like 50% cocoa chocolate. So definitely dark chocolate, but it does mellow its way out a little bit. Above all of that, you start to get the kind of brown sugars and things, and the brown sugars are quite interesting. So you have this kind of roasty toasty layer. So yeah, you have this kind of roasty toasty brown sugary layer in the base, and then above all of that you get the more kind of leathery, sweet, oily brown sugary character. So yeah, above the chocolate, roasty toasty brown sugars. If you go to the dead center of your palate, it's this really kind of like treacle, molasses, oily sort of thing. As you move further out from that, it's got a little bit more of a yeah, it has a little bit more of a kind of, I would say, like sweeter caramel, and then as you push toward the edges of the tongue, you do get a little bit of, yeah, it's more about the kind of roasty toasty brown sugar. So it's kind of like a layer, if you like, the oily boozy brown sugary character in the dead center of your tongue, a little bit more of the sweet caramel, treacle, molasses kind of thing there. And then yeah, as you move out toward the edges, it's the more roasty toasty brown sugars, and all of that sits on top of the kind of chocolatey layer that we talked about. The thing that's surprising me a little bit about this beer is that there's cocoa nibs in this one as well. The cocoa nibs take a little while to come out actually, and I don't find the vanilla overly prominent in this beer either. But I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of the palate in this one, so we can focus on the back third of the palate a little bit. So as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back, and the complexity of an Imperial Stout is always going to be in the middle third of the palate. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you're getting, in the base you're obviously getting some of the rye bread, above that you're getting some of the kind of more wholemeal brown bread, and then you get some of the cakey kind of character in there. What I would say about those notes in there is that you can get this little bit of cocoa nibby chocolate powder type dryness, which is quite interesting. But the base of the back third of the palate, obviously you've got the roasty toasty well-fired black malt in there, which is drier and more kind of pungent, if you like. Then you've got the kind of rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, the wholemeal brown bready layer, which sits there and feels lighter and more airy, and then you've got the kind of sponge cakey sort of thing as well. And then you have, above that you can feel some of the roasty, you get a more roasty aspect to the chocolate just sitting above that and kind of rounding out the, how would you say, the malty side of the back third of your palate. And then above everything else you've got the yeast. So let's look at the yeasty side of the beer then. So yeah, yeasty side of the beer is kind of what you'd expect. The yeast sits above everything else on the back third of the palate. So you've got this really dense, very sweet, like mix of brandy soaked sponge cake, deep rye bread and stuff, and then a kind of really roasty toasty bread crust there. All of that sits on in the yeasty side of things on the top of the back third of the palate, and definitely you can feel that the flavour with that back third of the palate is a lot taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way everything kind of pieces together is really, really nice. So yeasty, and I think that's the yeasty and the malty character of this beer kind of summarised quite nicely. On the hoppy side of things, the beer actually at this point still does have a little bit of hoppy character. Obviously with a big 12.5% Imperial Stout, you could age this a little bit and let the hoppy character drop out a wee bit more. Your choice, of course. It is in a can, which is not as secure as a wax top bottle or whatever, but still. On the hoppy side of things, nonetheless, in the back corners of the palate, you've got a good little bit of earthiness in there, quite a strong earthiness. As you move further forward, there's a little bit of herbal character, and as you push further forward, you get a wee bit more of a floral note out of this one, but it's mainly a kind of strong, earthy character that comes out of this. I wouldn't be surprised actually if it's not Bramlin's Cross. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of English Fugo that's been used in this one, just because of how strong the earthy and herbal character is, and you know that sort of cigarette ashy, earthy sort of thing was a characteristic of Fugo. But round the front curve of the tongue, you get a little bit of that lighter, grassy sort of thing, which was quite interesting, and it's quite an oily, grassy character as well. I think we've covered the green component at that point, so let's focus on the front third of your tongue and the sort of fruity side of things then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the sort of rye bready base, the wholemeal bready character in the middle, and then the sort of sponge cakey character on top. And then the base of that front third of your palate, you get the bread crust, again the sort of rye bready character, brown bread, and the sponge, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. The thing that's surprising me about this beer though is that you don't get more vanilla out of it, because it's supposed to have vanilla paste in it. So yeah, getting a wee bit of gas out of the beer, but I don't get too much vanilla in this one, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, for me, there is a wee bit of vanilla into the aftertaste, but not overly much, to be honest with you. If we focus on the fruity side of this one, I would say that it's quite interesting because for me, it's quite juicy in a sense. It's quite an oily fruity character you get there. If you go to the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of oily, plummy kind of character. Further down, you get a little bit of a more like dry, pruny type note. There's a little bit of a sultana kind of, there's a little bit of sultana and a little bit of a kind of raisiny type character as well, you know, dry notes. But as you move further forward, as you progress into the aftertaste with this beer, more of the roasty, toasty black malt pushes its way out, and that really dries out the beer into the aftertaste. So let's just try and focus on the actual fruity side of it, because yeah, this beer actually does give you more and more bitterness into the aftertaste. We'll come on to that in the mouthfeel. But yeah, lots of big kind of plummy juiciness in this one. Prunes, definitely a bit of date. We're talking about the back half of that front third of your palate, incidentally. Yeah, plums, prunes, dates, sultanas, raisins underneath. And as you move further forward, if you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, there's definitely a little bit of a figgy character in there. And then yeah, as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, there's black currants, blackberries, and things like that. And yeah, the way the fruity side of this beer goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, but definitely, further into the aftertaste, it shows you more of that roasty, toasty, RIS type quality. But overall, just a really, really interesting beer. At 12.5%, I can feel the booze in this one kind of go into my head. But yeah, that's not surprising, to be honest with you. And I'm also a little bit tired, so that's how it goes. But yeah, let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. Mouthfeel wise, definitely full-bodied. Pushing toward the top end of full-bodied as well, actually. The more I drink of this beer and the more that it warms up, it gets thicker and thicker. So mid-range of full-bodied toward top end of full-bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. Very oily, very slick, silky sort of mouthfeel to the beer. IBU wise, as I say, this beer builds into the aftertaste. I wouldn't be surprised if there's this sort of 70, 80 IBUs. It could be a little bit higher. There's a lot of dryness in this one, which could be conflated with bitterness. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So yeah, 70, 80 IBUs would not surprise me with this beer. But the malt base has roastiness and dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a sort of dry, leathery sweetness on top. The more that I drink of this one, I do wonder if maybe what I said about a longer wort boil earlier on is not accurate. Maybe this beer has had a slightly longer wort boil in addition to being double mash. Again, I'd be very curious to see the brew sheet on this one. So yeah, the malt base has a lot of stuff going on with it, and then you've also got these kind of big oily fruity characters coming out of the beer as well. Big nice kind of oily red fruity notes. So yeah, all in all, really interesting beer, this one, and really happy that I got to try it. And definitely cool to try my first Imperial Stout from Deya Brewing Company as well. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Chelt Vegas, a 12.5% monster Imperial Stout with vanilla paste, cocoa nibs, and Belgian dark sugar in it, along with a crazy malt base from the wonderful Deya Brewing Company in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire in England. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Deya Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But this was an awesome beer. I certainly don't regret the price that I paid for it, but I'm going to go away and enjoy the rest of this one now. So until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out Deya's social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao.